coffee's hot.
It is hot. Need a sleeve on that
I
one.
know, like it's hard to grab. Why does it have to be that hot?
There's a point where coffee's too hot.
So like, when they get the machine
Yeah.
at Tim Hortons,
Yeah.
like, do they have control? They don't have control, I imagine. But like,
I think they do. I think they can. I
maybe
think they can heat it up to a certain degree.
knock it down a couple.
I know when it's too hot, it's like, come on, guys. A couple weeks ago, I spilled one all over my
I know, I remember.
legs and nuts.
It's a good. It's a good way to
Wow.
get burnt. Knock it down a couple degrees centigrade.
Yeah.
You know, Kelvin, a couple Kelvin.
Yeah, that's another measurement.
Yeah. I digress.
Yeah.
So here we are today.
Yeah.
Do you got any bullshit first, or do you want me to just get going here? Good topic. So I know.
I always have some bullshit, but nothing comes off the top of my head today. Why you want me to think of something?
No,
No, okay.
I was just because we can get into it, but I didn't know if you had something prepared that you wanted to start with. You're good.
No, reading some books, watching documentaries like crazy right now.
Are you?
Got a little extra time, for another week.
You want to hear a cool
yeah,
thing?
Yeah, go there. There's some bullshit for us.
As soon as you say one thing that triggers it. So I had that grade 7 class in here yesterday.
Yeah.
So for people that wouldn't know, obviously, I also do a high school class. I do 4 classes actually, grade school and high school. So we had the grade 7 class and all new kids. So I did the go around the room and tell me your name and something interesting about yourself. But you know how like we take everything to the extreme.
Yeah.
So I said to the kids, like, it has to be interesting. Like if it's not interesting, then I'm gonna keep digging, right? So I'm like, I spent like 5 minutes on this one kid waiting for him to tell me something, because everyone's interesting. Everyone's got something interesting, right? So I get to this one kid. I'm not gonna say he's got like a cool name too, cool, funny, weird, whatever. He goes, I know all the countries in the whole world. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I can name all of them. I'm like, you can name every single country in the entire world. He's like, yeah. It's like, okay, how? Like, why do you know that? He's like, I really like geography. I'm like, oh yeah, do you like read books on it or whatever? He's like, YouTube videos. Like I do every day. I look at. Like, okay. I'm like, can you name 5 countries in Asia? He rattled off like 15, no problem, without even taking a slight pause.
Good for this
Grade
guy.
7.
Yeah.
Grade 7. It was very impressive. Very interesting.
Charlie brought that up to me one day. He goes, how many countries in South America? Central America. You have any idea?
Not a clue.
What would you
In Central America?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe like 10.
There's more, I think.
Is there?
I don't know.
You want me to look it
No,
up?
but I thought it was like I think it's Central America. It's cute. There's all kinds of small ones
Charlie
like
likes
Nicaragua.
geography stuff too.
Yeah, it's all right.
He's kind of into it a
It's
little
all
bit.
right. I've always liked it because, like, why not? Someone says they're going to Spain. Like, where's Spain? Right?
There's 7.
Is it
7 countries in Central. Guatemala, Belize. I don't know
Yeah.
what that is. Honduras, El
Yeah.
Salvador, Nicaragua,
Yeah.
Costa Rica, and Panama.
For some reason, I always thought there was more.
I don't know. I also don't know why.
Maybe it's South
If
America.
Central America is not a continent, it confuses me when they call it Central America.
So maybe it's South America then.
Okay.
I don't know. I got to
Either
screw
way.
up. I'll have to touch base with them. What a piece of useless information we just talked
No,
about.
that's fine.
But it is good to know where countries are.
It is. It's good to know.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I'm going on a trip. I'm not going to disclose where, just in case somebody wants to try to come and murder me.
You're really
So
wanted
mysterious.
out there, right?
Yeah, so mysterious. But
murder you.
Yeah, murder me. So I was looking around the map of where we're going. Never been around any of these places. Had no idea what some of the name. I'm looking at some of the names of some of these places. I don't know shit about anything. It's funny because hockey takes you a lot of places, but you never really go because you're just there to play hockey.
rinks.
So it's the same. I could go to Boston. I could go to Finland. I could go wherever. I go to a rink and then I go to the hotel and then I get up and I do it again.
Yeah.
So you don't really get to experience the place that you went. I say that all the time. So all my years playing, I've taken planes places. I've taken buses all over the continent, everywhere. And I never really got to experience any like the really cool cities or cool countries that I've, not countries, but cool cities that I've been to. And now that I'm done, get a little time to actually experience some of the different places, because I find it so interesting, like where people come from, their language, or like culture stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's gonna test you.
In which
2
way?
weeks? 2 weeks is it?
2 weeks.
You're going for 2 weeks?
Yep.
Well, because it's going to test you probably like it tests me out of your routine. Huge.
Yeah.
And you have to put the hat on of just being a tourist or being a
Yeah. Go with the flow.
relax or learn whatever it is,
Yep.
but without a gym, without your day-to-day stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's real hard for me.
Me too. I think the nice thing is that I feel like there's a sweet spot where if you're gone for long enough, you can establish the routine again. So if you go on vacation for like a week, not good, because that's 7 days. It's not enough to really establish what you're doing. But when you get up, like I'm going to be gone 14 days. I think that's long enough where I could actually establish somewhat of a routine for the 2 weeks if I start right away. So, because we have a gym, like we have access to a gym, we have food, a lot of different food choices, obviously. It's going to be the temptation to eat, overeat, indulge, as they say, in food and drink.
One of my favorite places I've been to was San Diego.
Yeah, you told me that.
That's not
Good
like
spot.
that thrilling, I guess, if you're going on a major vacation.
It's really nice,
like it's not Europe or whatever, but I really enjoyed San Diego. I'd recommend that.
I've never been.
That guy that I played with, I told him I was going down. He followed not the podcast, a lot of my video stuff.
Yeah.
And when he found out I was going, he said he set me up downtown San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And downtown San Diego, it's got to be one of the nicest cities. One of the nicest I've ever been to. You get perfect weather on the ocean, and it's perfect weather, and it's like right close to Mexico.
Yeah.
So he set me up in this hotel, which was it was in the, what's it called, the Gas Lamp District, which is hundreds of restaurants and bars.
Cool. Love that.
Yeah, hundreds. I think like 300, like everywhere you go. Then I was really reading into Navy SEALs and military special ops and all that stuff.
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff out there, right?
Well, the Navy right there. So the Navy SEAls are right in Coronado.
Mm-hmm.
I got another story. I don't know if I should tell it, but well, no, I'm going to say a little bit. So, got to go on this huge Navy cruise, or not a cruise ship, but Navy ship, and incredible. Like it's a city inside this thing, and the aircraft carrier, right?
Yep.
And so did that. Went to the Coronado, which is like, there's this hotel in Coronado, which is like the top hotel in U.S. really, unreal. And then, but we were downtown, so he got us set up with a friend of his that ran the Sophia Hotel. Cost me $50 a night.
Wow.
He gave me that much of a deal.
Cool.
And the hotel is down in that area. You're talking 350, 400, 500, like easily. This was a boutique hotel. It was unbelievable. And I was close to everything. And then we went to all kinds of different beaches and stuff. Charlie did some surfing on Mission Beach, Ocean Beach. We went to Coronado all the time. It was unreal.
So what's cool about traveling in just general, you get to experience a whole bunch of different things that you don't get at home, which is cool. And then there's always a little bit of an element of networking too. Like you never know who you're going to run into or who you're going to talk to or who you're going to meet while you're. That's why people are interesting. That's why like speaking of all the restaurants and stuff that you guys are around, my girlfriend and I are so on the same page with our interest and do it. Like if we're going to hang out with people, go for dinner where we can actually sit and talk, eat good food, hang out. Because then you actually get to talk. You get to actually have a conversation and see what people are doing and what they're into and whatever. And you never know where that goes, rather than just going to like a really loud banging club, like all this kind of crap.
All the same.
So I'm looking forward to the trip we're going on. I'm looking forward to like checking all this stuff out.
Another one for us that's really good place and very inexpensive to get there. And maybe when you're there, it's a little more expensive, but not bad. It was Boston area, Boston, Maine. Boston up to Maine. Yeah, we did that the year before COVID. We went up to, we spent a week and a bit in Maine. Yeah, I remember. And we went down to Boston and stuff, and I would do that in a heartbeat as well. It's really cool. Yeah, the history, right? Both places, both ends of the country got northeast and southwest. Yep. And the northeast is like where people settled. Obviously, I'm not a history teacher, but it's where they settled. So that history of how old the country is and like the names. This is why that name is so important, right? Like, or so prevalent. Like Philadelphia is like that too.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, we went there.
But San Diego is kind of the same but different. It's that Mexican influence, right? Yeah. It's so cool. Like Old Town, which is basically Mexican town. unbelievable.
Yeah, it's
It's
awesome.
authentic stuff. You're getting authentic. Just watching them making it and unbelievable. It's amazing, man.
I know. I like that. That's what's if you get the opportunity to go travel a place like that, if you do it the right way, it's like I think it's so cool. Go with the right people where it's like you're actually not just because I don't like the go travel run around like a crazy person for the whole time. It's like pick 1 or 2 places and like just go and hang out there and see what's up for
or
a
all
while.
inclusive where you just sit there and
Yeah. That gets old for me.
Yeah.
That's like
I like it.
I like it for a bit,
But
and then it's like
That's what I liked about both of our last vacations, which I don't do very often,
Mhm.
is we were active, like
Right.
on the beach in Maine.
Yeah.
I'd get up every day and we go on the beach, and I'd do running on the beach and push-ups, and like just did my own thing. And then for my legs, I'd go, me and Charlie would get in the ocean, and the waves are nice and big, so we'd get there and we'd squat and jump over the waves. Like that's just exercise, but it was so much fun. Play catch in the ocean. Same within San Diego, right? But you're walking everywhere, and it's like it's great.
Yeah, it's great. That's what you want, where it's not just like a bender the whole time you're gone. I'm not into that so much. A couple days of that, it's a lot to handle. But cool. So there you go. Went on a tangent there. We have a good topic today.
Kinda.
This was brought. Yeah, kinda. Good. It's good because I feel like a lot of people will be interested in the topic. Not so good because I feel like for you and I, it's like there's not a whole lot to talk about because it's not that big of a deal. But for people that are in it, it can be a really big deal. So the process of minor hockey tryouts is what we're gonna get into, right?
Qualify that though, but that would be based on what we see in a local area,
That's right.
Which would be southwestern Ontario, where the organization's not Toronto, it's not Detroit,
I
it's
was
not
just
Chicago.
gonna say that. Yeah.
It's not the big centers where the rules may not apply exactly, just differently. And I think what we'll expand on is not just the tryouts, but the process of what the communication and the way parents should prepare their kids. Not should, don't want to say that, but can prepare their kids. How coaches can and should possibly communicate with players, not necessarily only for tryouts, but for the whole season.
Yeah.
And et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you.
Yeah. So it's not going to be, like to your point, it's not going to be exactly if you're listening from a different area, but there's going to be threads you can pull, obviously, that apply to your situation. So what started it was we had a dad come in that was talking about they're going through tryouts. Everyone's just kind of finishing up right now for all the AAA teams around here. And he was kind of saying how the parents are all going a little bit crazy about the process of how they pick teams and how the tryouts are run. So that's everything from the like how it's scheduled, how many times they're on the ice, what the evaluations look like, to signing kids, to kids getting cut, to the coaching communication, to how the parents are behaving around all this kind of stuff. So I want to get into all of those things a little bit separately. But before I do that, do you have any, just kind of before we start picking points one at a time here, do you have any just kind of general thoughts about the process or what you think of it in general, or whether it's good or bad, or what you like or don't like, or anything like that before we start to get more specific?
Tryouts?
Yeah, just the process, because I know you remember going through it.
The thing is it's I don't know if there's a perfect system, because to have a AAA team, you have to have tryouts, and when you have tryouts in this area particularly, and most areas, when you get outside of Toronto or Detroit, like the United States have a lot different rules. Like the boundaries aren't so. They're pretty loose, but in Toronto they're a lot looser, and then outside of Toronto you have boundaries. So basically, if I live on across the street from you, that you could be in a different town, and that means you're on a different organization. So in the Windsor area, London area, like I'll use those for example. So in Windsor, Sun County Panthers would be the AAA zone for the county.
Yeah.
If you live in a smaller district where it's called Windsor AAA. Okay, London's the same. You got the city of London, and then outside is called Elgin Middlesex. That's the county. So what happens if you live across whatever street? Then that's where you belong, and it limits your choices. You don't have a choice. You have to go play for a certain place, which is a problem in itself.
Yep.
So what it does, what I think what they try to do is try to eliminate. Well, I guess. The organization that runs that in this case would be the Alliance organization. Then you got the GTHL, all these different things. But this is called the Alliance, so they have to set rules so people aren't going crazy. Because then you could try to build super teams, right? Which there's an issue there. So I understand the issue of that. The problem I have with having the boundaries is that if you just happen to live on the wrong side of the street, and let's say I'm your coach, you live in Windsor, I coach the Windsor team, and I'm a jerk, and you don't like me, and I don't like you, or I'm a control freak, or I'm just everything that you're not, you have to come and play for me anyways.
Yep.
And you could be going to a different school with all these kids on that team, but because you live on this side of the street, you got to play for me, and it could be a really terrible program, the whole bit. But oh well, son.
Yeah.
Right. So there's the issue. The flip side of that is that if you have the open boundaries, totally open boundaries, now it becomes a building super teams, and or I could be control of this team, and I would like to make $3,000 off of every player, and money becomes the issue, or something along those lines becomes the motivating factor for picking players.
Yeah.
Or I get kids from, if I can recruit and get people that would respect me, I can get kids from anywhere. And now that takes away from your local kids, which is kind of defeating the purpose. So in that case, starting off there's a whole bunch of issues, and there's no perfect scenario. If you move to Toronto, now all of a sudden, because I guess the lines are all over the place, you just go and play for whoever you want, I think.
Yeah, more or less.
But I can say that when I coached in Detroit, major band of minor midget in Detroit, I didn't understand either, but we had people calling me from Florida, from Ohio, from all over the place. We'd like to play. I got a kid from New York, this, whatever. I'm like, what the heck is going on? We got really good kids here in Detroit.
Yeah.
But so that causes another problem. So anyways.
No, yeah, that's a good frame, because it's important for people before you start to get into it and sound like we're picking apart all the problems. It's important to realize that if you go to the other side where you have the system like a GTHL, that's got all its own issues, right? You get the top 2-3 teams in that GTHL that are always the best team in the province, maybe the country or whatever. And then you get the rest of the teams that are, I think, so the way someone explained it before, I forget who was talking to us about it, is like the top 3 teams are unreal, middle 3 teams are okay, and then the bottom 3 teams are no good when you're in Toronto. And that's kind of because you can go to wherever you want to go.
I would basically say that you've got your top 3 teams, maybe 4, but
right.
Your top 2 teams they're unreal.
Right. So
that'd be the same in Detroit. You have your top 2-3 teams that are really, really, really
right.
good, and then it's like it funnels down a little bit. It gets a little sloppier.
Exactly. So there's a balance of, like, understanding that there's good and bad to whatever the system is that you set up. And in theory, like you said, with the way they draw lines and all that kind of stuff, the theory of it, there's a point to be made there where you don't want just all the best players going to whatever team, and then the other teams are all garbage.
Yeah.
So I can understand that, but that comes with its own problems. So having said that, it can be really difficult where we live. If you want to switch teams or go somewhere else, it can be a real big issue for the organization you're trying to get a release from, which that's the term they use for getting your release to go to another team. It could be a big issue for the parents and the kids, and it can cause a lot of conflict among parents and coaches and players and kids and people that are friends, whatever, just because everyone gets really caught up in, like, this is the most important thing in the world right now. So I think the way I'm going to frame the whole thing, and we're going to try to provide a perspective on it, kind of zoomed out a little bit further outside of just, the parents and players and coaches that are just really in it right now. And it seems like their whole world on their AAA team, because that's kind of what we were saying to the dad that was here talking to us about it. He's telling us all these stories, and we're kind of laughing, remembering going through it. And now that we're out, and you got to go through it again with your own son, you get to think, wow, how insignificant some of these problems were, or wow, how much that thing that seemed like it was a really big deal actually didn't matter.
Yeah.
And kind of things like that. So we're gonna try to provide some zoom out perspective on the situation, and then I'm obviously gonna have you do most of the talking, sharing your thoughts on it. So the first thing that we kind of mentioned yesterday was when they're setting up the tryouts, a lot of times you'll have maybe a day or two, like 2 skates or whatever, where you have to perform, and that's what they're judging you on. So just give me a little bit of your thoughts on what you think of that setup, where you have maybe 2 tryouts and 2 exhibition games, and that's kind of all you get when there might be 40 kids or 45 kids at a tryout and for a team in Windsor.
Yeah, so in this area, I'm going to go 2 different ways.
Yep.
In this area, you've got, if you have a really good populated tryout, like a lot of kids trying out, you're going to have 40 to 60 kids. That would be a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. That's for this area with a population of around here, about 300,000, 250. Yep. That's a lot of hockey players trying out for 1 or 2 teams. Whereas you're in the GTHL, you have 60 would be very small. So what it is in here, this area and several areas, this would be the Alliance or OMHA, stuff like that, Ontario Minor Hockey Association. What it is they give, this is when you're allowed to have your tryouts, on starting here and ending here, and it's a very short time frame. So I think in this area it was 4 days or 6 days.
6 days, yeah.
Okay, 6 days. There's 2 organizations here, and that's similar there. So you have to give someone 2 chances to try out, and then you can release them or sign them or whatever. At the same time, the competing team is doing the exact same thing. So if you release players, then they get to choose, but then they have it at the exact same time, so it's chaos.
Right.
So at the 11th hour or the 12th hour, people are going, I got released. Can we go on this team? And you try to get tryouts, and you kind of almost have to grant a tryout almost. Yeah. So you have to do extra tryouts, but so that's an issue. In the Toronto area, it's not. There are tryouts, and I guess the same would be here. There are tryouts, but there's also, it's not that difficult, especially in a population like this, to know who the top players are. So they're called tryouts, but are they really tryouts? That's the other issue.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
Like if you play,
you kind of know the team.
You know the team, you know the area, right? It's not like if there was someone playing for the AAA team, you know who your best players are. Now you all know who at the next. Say you're playing Major Bantam, let's say, or we call it U15 now. And if you look at the U15s from the previous season in the next level, so the travel AA, the AA centers and stuff like that, you know who the best players are. Yep. For the most part. Can someone surprise you in a tryout? Yes, but for the most part, you have your mind almost made up at that point. Okay, so is it enough time to look at a player honestly? No, it's just not enough, and because you're not, it has to be in a game situation to see if a kid can play. The other issue is what if you have 7 goalies try out and you got 4 sessions and you play, like a lot of these teams will do drills and stuff. It's like, well, that's how you even tell a hockey player. So let's just say you have 4 different games, you got 7 different goalies, and they get in the net and they don't get a shot for their half of the game. It's not even fair. It's not even right. So it's not a really good way to evaluate people anyways. Mm-hmm. But what do? Yeah. You have to do something. So my thing on that is that people have a really, really good idea who the top dogs are. Mm-hmm. And then to go to a tryout or to have a season before and challenge for one of those positions, it's totally possible, but you would have to be on the radar probably before that.
Right. And I think,
or grow 6 inches in the last 3-4 months.
That just really jumps out. Yeah. I think when we were talking yesterday, the kind of the thing I said is most of the issues that come around tryouts are more or less for the 5 kids, the bottom 5 kids on the team that get signed, or the 5 kids that almost made the team that got cut. Yeah. So there's like a 10-person. I
would agree.
Around a 10 player range of kids that will be affected by the issues of tryouts. I would agree. Right, and how the system works. Because if you're outside of the 5 kids that got cut but almost made it, it's like you weren't really going to make it. Like you didn't really have a good shot at making the team anyways. Yeah. So how much more time did you need to be evaluated? Probably not a whole lot. So if you're going to be, if your kid is 27th on the depth chart when there's 15 skaters, it's like, should you really be upset that the tryout's only 2 days? Not really. Yeah. And then on the flip side, if you're one of the 5 kids that makes it, but you're the bottom 5 kids and you're in that squirm position of you're on the bubble or whatever and you almost got cut, that's where those kids can kind of feel the heat. Yeah. So I think it's really all of the issues in terms of how tryouts are set up kind of are geared toward those 10 kids. Now, there's surrounding things that happen that don't need to, because, to your first point saying how there's no perfect system and that kind of thing, that's true. But there's also stupid things that are done that don't need to be done that just cause further issues. Yeah. So the next thing I kind of want to touch on after that was kind of how a lot of teams will like sign kids early, or some variation of that, where it's like a big secret, and then there's like a big announcement that the best 12-year-old signed early or whatever. So I'll let you hop in with some thoughts on that, and then I'll pipe up after.
Yeah, that's the part where,
you know what I mean? Like, this is unnecessary stuff, right?
It's unnecessary. Like when you're looking at youth hockey, see this is the part. Like, okay, so let me just go back to the tryout phase.
Yep.
Okay, so some of the issues that kids, it's not to be discouraging at all.
Yep.
Okay, but I'm being very realistic with parents, coaches, and players right now. If you're a 13-year-old hockey player trying out for a team, and you haven't played on the AAA team yet, or the AA team, whatever, but I'm going to talk AAA. You haven't played on that team yet. You have to do something very outstanding to make that team, or you have to do something very outstanding to make that team. Maybe it was the previous season, or when you get to tryouts, like you're like just over the top good.
Yeah.
Because the other issue is, as a coach, is a lot of the times it's like this kid's had his AAA socks on since he's 9, and now he's 13, because you get labeled early. Right. So if you're labeled as a AAA player, which we see all the time, and at the time you see kids starting to go down, 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 you see other kids come up, 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 and there's a point where it's a balancing act. And though the question that parents, players, and coaches have to ask is can I make the jump, or can I stay here? Am I good enough to stay here? And both have to have a dose of reality. Because if someone was just really good, and we talk about it, and I've seen it all the time, there's certain kids I use as examples all the time around here. It's like, this kid had a hairy chest at 11 or 12. Of course he's better, but he never got better, right? And this kid is starting to get better. At some point, this kid's going to be better, but the coach has to make a decision. Do I keep the devil I know, or the devil I don't know? And a lot of times they hang on to this guy 1 more year, 2 more years. So it's very, very tough for that new guy to come in and make that team.
Absolutely, yeah.
Unless he does something really good, or this guy goes to the philosophy, which would be my philosophy if it's based on winning and developing. My philosophy is there needs to be a change every year. And like, I learned this from a very, very successful businessman. He goes, he has to turn over the most unproductive, like he calls, I think it's bottom, less than a third, but about a third of the guys in his corporation. He has to turn them over because they're useless at some point. So he has new fresh blood. So anyways, that's that. So it's something to keep in consideration. And as a parent, preparing your kid for that tryout, to know that it's very, very difficult to make, not because you're maybe not good enough, but because of that issue. It's just like, you got to replace someone, and it's really close, and do they actually take a new guy that they don't know? So you have to earn that spot. And then once you get there, it could be, then it's like a non-issue. Right. It's like the OHL, right? NHL. People have contracts. People are in, that's your team, and then it's for someone else's job to replace that. This guy has a long leash, needs to fail a few times before this guy actually takes over.
Yep.
So that's that.
Yeah, and it's not that that's wrong either. Like, people that listen to you say that will be like, well, that's not really fair. If this kid's better, he should make it, whatever. And it's like, not really, because your kid hasn't, like we talked about with rookies coming into the OHL, you haven't played any games at that level yet. So people don't know what to expect. So you're not just going to be given the same chance as everyone else right off the hop necessarily, unless you are that outstanding kid that really just blew the doors off at Tryouts, which that can happen. But if you're one of those kids and you think, well, my kid's now better than this kid, and they still cut my kid just because XYZ reason, and it's not fair, and it's politics and all this kind of stuff. It's like, not really. It's not really. It's you know what I mean?
It's not yet.
Yeah. It's like, if I've seen this kid play for 3 years in a row at the AAA level, and I have a question mark by him now where I don't know if he's sticking there or not. And then I got your kid coming up, and it's like, okay, he looks pretty good, but I haven't seen him play at this level yet. That's a fair question, and it makes sense as a human to go with the thing that you feel is a little bit more safe, especially if you're in the position of a coach, right? So that's an important thing to keep in mind.
And conversely, is you have the kid that tried out at U8 or U9 that made the team, and all the kids haven't tried out yet. So it's now he's been on the team for 2-3 years. And it's like they feel like, oh, I'm just on this team. It's like, well, not really.
Exactly.
So a lot of times they have a hard time letting go of that hockey player.
Yep.
When it's like, no, it's time. They're done. They're not good at this. These other 3 kids are better than this guy by a long shot, because it's just the way it goes.
That's a really good point too, because then you get the sour ass on the other side too, where it's like, well, how could they do this to my kid? He's been on this team for 5 years and whatever,
Yeah.
right?
I can't even tell you. Like I know a couple people, their kids played AAA for a year, and they're Charlie's age. They're 17, 18 years old, and they still consider their kid a AAA player, but they only played 1 year when they were young, and they got cut.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, you're not.
Yeah, you're not.
You made it when it was bad. So, anyways,
yeah.
So some of the things that we saw, like you were saying about signing kids early, it's like this is where we have to look at youth and people and have a brain. I don't like it. So back when my kid was playing hockey, that's what they were doing. They were signing guys early. So there would be 5 guys, let's say on day 1, even before the tryout even started, and all the kids said, "Oh, you, come upstairs for a second," and they went and signed, and then they said, "Don't say anything." Well, what is an 11-year-old kid going to say?
I signed.
Well, or either that, or they're like, the kids are going to say, what did you do up there? They're like, "Oh, nothing. Why?"
Yeah.
Like, no, something happened.
Exactly.
They're kids, man.
Yeah.
So I signed. So what that does is, number one, it says to all the kids out there that, like, if you're the first one that signed and came down, then that tells everyone there that that's the best player.
Yeah. And
then the kid comes down and not that he necessarily exudes this, but he comes down and goes, "Yeah, I'm the best player. I signed first," and he signs. And so then your top 5 got signed on day 1, and we're talking youth hockey.
Yeah.
We're not talking OHL. We're not talking college. We're not talking pro. We're talking youth hockey.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, the parents and everyone's looking around, go, "Why did they sign this guy?" And then they start worrying and all that stuff. But it sends a bad message.
Yeah.
And the message is that these guys are the best, and then you guys have to wait. And then even if you make the team and you're the 14th, 17th guy that signed, it's like, okay, like you made it, but you didn't really.
Yeah,
like
you almost didn't.
You almost didn't make it. So like you're a 4th line guy.
Yeah.
It's like you already set in a hierarchy, and you haven't done the tryouts yet.
Yeah.
So to me, it just adds a really bad message.
Yeah.
And when you could do it all together.
Yeah, for sure.
Like the tryouts are done on September 4th. What a day I picked, eh?
Yeah.
September 4th is the day that the team will be picked. And this is when whatever. And then you call the kids in. It's like at 11 o'clock after the practice or whatever, the kids that make the team are going to go and sign their card to play for the team. Now everybody signs at the same time. Everybody's the exact same level, apparently.
Yeah.
The kids know who the best are anyways.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. You send a really bad message when we got 3 guys left to make the team. It's like, it's not a good message for kids.
Yeah.
And it's confusing for parents, and it's to me it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And it does. I don't think it's a time issue, because it doesn't take that much time to lay 18 cards out and say, "Okay, sign here."
Right.
With the organization staff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So just to maybe play both sides a little bit, there might be some argument, which I still don't really agree with. You want to sign the top kids early so that they don't feel like they might need to go to another team. There might be an argument for that.
Okay, but I'll argue it back.
Of
say
course.
that the top players already know that they're on the team.
That's right. But okay, so for example, we had a kid that was trying out for a junior team here locally.
Yeah.
And they didn't sign him off the bat. And so now that kid and his dad that talked to you was kind of saying like, "Man, like should we be thinking about going to another team to sign? Because like I don't know if he's gonna get signed." Now, obviously a different circumstance, because he's a rookie, he's a first-year player, and he would be one of those guys where it is uncertain. Because that's just to your point. If you're one of the top guys, you know you're getting signed.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a little bit of an argument for that, whereas like you want to make your top players feel like you want them here, and there's no question that they're the top. There might be a little bit of a argument to be made for that, but overwhelmingly, obviously, I'm on the side of what you're talking about. It's just it sends a bad message among the players, because now if you're one of the last kids signed, like you said, you feel like you're not necessarily as much of a part of the team as the guys that signed earlier.
Yeah.
You know, so if 3 days ago the first 8 kids signed, now the next 7 kids are going to feel like, well, maybe we're not really in that core group of the best guys, which is just an unnecessary thing to do, because they're going to figure that out anyways once the season starts, of who's the top guys and who's not, right? Yeah. Then the other element that gets brought into the whole dynamic when you do that as the coach or the organization is now you're going to start parent conflict, because parents aren't allowed to say whether they signed or not. So
Yeah, they're told once they sign, don't go.
right.
Don't go
So
telling.
if I'm best friends with you and both of our kids are on the team and your kid signs and mine doesn't, and I just say, hey, like, did the boys are saying your kid did he sign? And you just look at me and you're just like, well, no, he didn't sign. No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Or however you do it.
However you do it, it's like now you're just between people that are friends, because when you play minor hockey, that's normally there's parents that are friends and kids that are friends and whatever. Now, as a human, nothing to do with hockey now. It's like, dude, why are you being all weird?
Yeah.
Why, you know what I mean? It's like, what happened? Just tell me what happened. You know, and then there's like the parent thinks, well, I shouldn't because the coach said, and this is where you start to make big deals out of things that aren't a big deal. Yeah. So that's the other thing that comes in, right?
Some people would do that. You and I wouldn't.
No.
I would say, yeah, he signed.
Right. But this is,
I don't agree with it, but he just signed.
But this is what happens with parents though, right? Because there's always like a secret.
A lot of the parents think that the hockey coach and the organizations have control of them. I don't understand that.
Well, but this is where it goes into the crazy hockey parent thing now, right? Yeah. Because everyone thinks this is like the most important thing in the whole world, that, oh, my kid signed first, and if you have a little bit of the crazy hockey bug, now things start to get weird. Or on the flip side, if you have a little bit of the crazy hockey bug and your kid didn't sign yet, now you're asking questions. Now you're like calling the coach. Now you're getting into all of that could just be avoided if we just sign everybody on the last day, because there's going to be conflict no matter what happens. But we're talking, and the system's not perfect again, like you said, but we're talking about avoiding some of the unnecessary problems that it causes, but despite all of the things that are just inherent to how it's set up that you can't fix. Don't add more, right? Don't put more fuel to the fire. If that makes sense. So I kind of wanted to move. Do you have anything else on that before I do next one?
Well, just while we're in there, we could just say like that. This is where a little bit of communication could go a long way, because it doesn't have to go nuts. Mm-hmm. Like Jerv's dad, right? We're good buddies and stuff like that. Like if him and I, like, of course we would be like, yeah, he's just to let you know, he just signed it. Oh, okay, cool, right? Mm-hmm. But like as a coach, a little bit of communication go a long way. Like if you are talking to, let's say you are one of my D, like trying out, and you're like 5 or like the bottom last couple signs. If I have an inkling or I say to you or the dad, and I say, listen, just so you know, he's really close to having made up my mind yet, but he's really, really close. At least you know. Yep. But if you sit there and say nothing, then it's like it's minor hockey, man.
Yeah. Okay.
It's minor hockey. So you could just, a little bit of communication can go a long way.
All right. So I wrote that. We'll get into that now because you brought it up, because I have it written here for the coach's communication, because at the end of the day, with a lot of this crap, it could be, what's the word? It could be really mitigated.
Wow, that's a good word.
That's a good word. With coaches just communicating up front in all aspects. Yeah. So if we go back to the start of the tryouts, where it's like, okay, so the one team that we were talking about, they had like whatever it was, 60 kids, 50 kids tryout, which is a lot for this area. Yeah. So if I'm the coach and I know I have more or less 2 full teams of AAA caliber, whatever that means, players coming together, plus all the usual kids that would try out, that's a lot of kids I got to look at. So before we start, how about we just lay it out to everybody and just be as transparent as possible? Like, we only have this much time to evaluate the kids. There's too many kids to look at. So it's not going to be the best circumstance ever for everyone. And we understand that, but there's not a lot we can do about it. So just like have some patience. We'll try to give everybody as much of a look as we can, but you got to understand there's a lot of kids and there's only a few of us that are looking at them. Yeah. So there's one thing that could help the situation. The signing thing is another one. It's like, either don't and wait till the team is picked. But if you're going to sign kids, then make it known at least. You take out, because then now you take out all the secrets, right? Because I remember this clear as day, man. When I was doing AAA tryouts, I remember it clear as day. There was like pockets of dads talking, and like there's like clubs and cliques of parents and whatever. And if you're the coach, you can just put a stop to all that right away. You're gonna say, "Yep, I really like these kids. They were on the team for the last 3 years. They're gonna be part of our leadership for the team," or whatever you want to say, and we've signed these 5 guys yesterday. And if people don't like that, whatever, you're the coach. You're at least being transparent and upfront. There's no secrets. There's nothing behind the scenes happening that people don't know about. And now at least everyone feels like they're included, right? Because otherwise you're making clubs, you're making little cliques on the team, like, oh, these are the 5 kids that are the best, and all these parents are going to be buddies now. And if we're not in that 5, well, now we have to find other friend parents on it. Like this kind of crap that doesn't need to happen, you know? And then towards the end of it, and this could maybe, well, I'll get your thoughts before we go to the next one, but when it comes to cutting kids, you have to talk to the kids, man. It's like, especially when you're talking about those 10, right? The 10 plus or minus.
That's the caveat.
It's like you find out, well, the one guy was talking to us too, he said his kid got cut this year. He's like, finds out on a website, right? It goes and looks on the website. Maybe it's a kid that played on the team last year. Maybe it's a kid that almost made it and was on the bubble and thought he made it or whatever. It's like, how are you cutting that kid and just letting him walk out the door without saying anything to him? You know,
it's not,
and it's just not,
good.
It's just not right. And as a coach, there's another thing. It's just, that's another thing you can just avoid by having a little bit of communication, particularly for those kids that just make the team or just get cut or that were close. You know, you got to talk to those kids, because even for the 5 kids that make the team, they know that they almost didn't make the team.
Yeah.
And it might be nice for them to have a word of encouragement to start the season off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So those are just a couple thoughts for coaches.
No, 100%. Like, so to be really clear again, you can't talk to every kid. If there's 60 kids and you're on the ice tomorrow, you don't have enough time.
Hmm.
So if you have to let go, like the first maybe day or second day of cuts, then get it down to your top 30. Let's say 30 kids, right? So you got 10, 12 kids fighting for a couple of spots. At that point, these kids are actually in the mix for trying. And I think you have to do your due diligence or be a human to a child and even to parents to help them find out why or why not they're going to make the team. Especially if a kid played on your team the year before. I think it's only common courtesy to maybe even encourage him. I remember I did this with a kid one year when I coached Charlie's team, young, but we had to cut only a couple kids. So it was the day one, and I went to the one boy, just a little boy.
Yeah.
So what am I gonna like? I'm thinking about this. Like, I know he's gonna get cut because there's nothing there. But what am I gonna do? Just cut him and just say, well, you just weren't good enough? So I went up to him about halfway through the first tryout, which was a horrible tryout for all of us because you can't even play a real game. So I went up to him and I said, hey. I said, how you doing, bud? He goes, oh, good. I said, are you working your hardest today? And he goes, yeah. I said, are you sure? And he goes, yeah. And he looked at me like, what do you mean, right?
Yeah.
I think he was 8, 9. So I said, listen, we got to make the team. We're going to have to, we got 17 kids or whatever. And I said, you really have to work a little bit harder because it's going to be tough for you to make. There's a lot of kids out here. He says, you're going to have to work hard. I'm just telling you, just work a lot harder. If you don't, it's going to be hard to make this team. And he looked at me like,
yeah,
right. But I did that.
Yeah.
So that when and he was on the team before.
Mm-hmm.
So when it was time to make our 2 cuts, I brought him in with his dad, and I said, just so you know, I did talk to him on the ice. I told him that he needed to work hard, and unfortunately, it's just this, and this is the reason why. And maybe I don't have to do that much, and if you work on a couple things, then maybe you can get your way back on the team. Kid was crying, dad was fuming, but I did what I had to do as a human being. Yeah. Just didn't cut the kid.
Right.
So at the point when you're releasing kids that either played on the team or are really close, I think it's only the right thing to do to give them some sort of feedback.
Right.
And say, you were actually this close, and it could be just, I know this guy, I don't know you well enough, I'm keeping him, whatever. Like, give them something.
And I think as the coach, to stick on that, because I really believe a lot of the problems of minor hockey, particularly with the parents, could be solved with not solved, but a lot of it could be really helpful if you just communicate well as a coach. It's very, very important. Yeah. So that kind of situation, like, people aren't good in that kind of situation where it's something that's confrontational, where there's conflict. Even if you're talking to a little kid, but you got the kid and his dad and his mom there and whatever, people don't like that. But you're the coach. You signed up for the job. Like, you signed up. You have to do this part of it. And it's just a good thing to do as a human being, is to give the people the time of day to make them feel like they understand why this happened. Because otherwise you leave the kid walking out the door with no answers. And then what's going to happen, which is, I remember this happening, the dad we were talking to said this happened. The kid walks out and he goes, like, what happened? Why did I get cut? And as parents,
just doesn't know.
As parents, you're handcuffed because maybe you don't know. You're just like, I literally don't know what to tell you. I don't know. The kid there's no recourse. There's nobody to ask. There's nobody to go to. So now this kid just has to sit and cry for the next month because he didn't make the AAA team, trying to figure out why he got cut when he played last year, or when he was told he would make the team this year, or when he thought he was one of the better players on the ice, and just has nothing. And for a little kid, it's just an unnecessary thing to do to a little kid. You don't need to do that. Even if they're older, if they're 14, 15, they're not a little kid anymore.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's just a human thing to do when you're the coach, right? You don't leave people hanging and give them no answers. When you're doing something that for them, and this is maybe the biggest thing I was thinking of yesterday, for the parents and for the kids playing, this is their whole world.
It's everything.
This is the most important thing.
For sure.
You as the coach, you get to go to bed, you go to your job in the morning, you go to sleep at night, and you're fine. For them, like, this is the most important thing. Like, on the weekends, they go on the road to play hockey. You know,
it's the greatest thing in the world.
All their buddies play on the team.
Wearing that jacket's the coolest thing.
But the parents are all friends and hang out. And now you're going to go cut this kid, which maybe they deserve to be cut. It's just the human thing to do to try to give them something to walk away with when you have to cut them, you know? And that's another huge issue I see right now with the tryout stuff. It's like, there's post the list on the website. There's no human element, you know?
So to me, that screams a couple things. One screams that I don't want the confrontation or to deal with having to have a conversation with dads that are going to be upset and kids that are going to be crying or explaining and maybe I don't know how to explain it. So I put a list up and now you can leave me alone. That's one.
Yep.
The other thing it screams to me is that, and I would say this happens a lot more often than not, and I've witnessed it very often, is you get someone that gets to be the coach. And I've seen it at the lowest levels, right up into the AAA levels. And when they become the coach, maybe for the first time in their life, they're in charge of something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
maybe for the first time in their life, they're not just going to work where someone's telling them what to do. And for the first time in their life, they get to where I get to be the head coach. And their ego goes like, or it's the one thing that they can control and they'd be the boss of, and they're right. And they could be like not qualified. I've seen this, like not qualified to coach a hockey team, but they're the head coach and they walk like it. They've got like that overly confident stride all of a sudden, like, you know, and like all of a sudden they stick out like a sore thumb, and they wear the fake
they like
head coach outfit.
Yeah.
But now and it's almost like watching the movies. The coach is the coach.
Yeah, Herb Brooks.
Yeah. They're direct. They're hard asses. It is what it is. This is hockey. You know, and they project that attitude where I don't have to explain because I'm the boss. And I see that more often than not. And I think that, that side of it comes across a lot more than people would actually think.
Absolutely.
It's like, I'm the boss. I don't need to explain it because I'm the coach. I don't owe you anything. And maybe you don't. In the OHL, you don't, but they still spend time talking to you. The NHL, when you leave, they give you some feedback. But at a youth hockey level, it's like I think the kids need to have some feedback on why they don't. But I think that's one of the reasons why it's listed. I don't have time for that because I'm the boss of this thing and can't tell me what to do, right?
Yeah. It's like they're the boss. They like the power,
Yeah.
you know? And I remember that too when I played minor hockey. I think back on some of these coaches, man. Like when we talked about the episode on coaches we liked and don't like, or that we liked and didn't like. It's like the list of didn't likes is so much longer than the list of likes. And that's
awful.
That's when I'm a little kid. I'm just a little kid. And I think of these grown adults. And if I saw them in public now, I wouldn't give a rip about even making eye contact walking by because of how they conducted themselves as the coach when I was a little kid. And that's just a testament. If you're a coach listening or a parent listening, the kids pay attention, man. We pay attention, and you do too, because you'll think back to your teachers and your coaches that you had as a grown-up, and you think the same thing. That guy was a goof. That guy was a goof. That guy was a goof. Couldn't stand that teacher, whatever. And it's mostly that, you know? So don't think that you're going to be outside of judgment in that regard just because you're in the position of power. You're not. Everybody's going to look back and remember how you behaved as the coach and or as a parent for that matter, but particularly as the coach, particularly when you're dealing with cutting kids and there's a lot of emotion involved from the parents and from the players, a lot of that can just be dealt with through even half decent communication. And you're still going to have parents freak out and you're still going to have kids freak out and they're going to be devastated and all that. But at least you did the right thing as the person in charge, and you're doing as much as you can to help them with that, walk away from that situation with something that's useful to move forward with, you know, instead of just leaving them in a puddle for the next month or whatever, you know. They'll hate your guts.
Actually one of the reasons I don't coach youth hockey anymore is because I have the business. And it was like, you can't suck and blow at the same time. Right? You can't want to have all the customers, but then at the same time cut them when they travel for the team. It's like, it's not really to me, it wasn't a really good business model.
Conflict of interest,
although
man.
I don't think a lot of people really care. But that was one of the reasons that I just didn't want to coach youth hockey, is because of that. Didn't want to deal with someone saying, I've spent $5,000 in the last year or 2 years with you, and you can't even have the decency to keep my kid. It's like, no,
well, and the thing too is that I've noticed is, even if you're somebody that runs a type of business that conflicts, even if you, as the person running the business, even if you don't think that, like, oh, there's a conflict, whatever, I really don't care, like, I'm going to keep the best kid, whatever, the perception among the people will be that.
Oh, 100%.
Right? It's like, oh, well, I've had kids say it to me already this year. Some kids that they play for a team with a particular coach, and it's like, oh, well, this is our coach, so we can't really go there because he runs his own skates and does whatever he does on the side, right? So even if you don't think that, people are going to think that anyways. Yeah. But it's really important, man, as a coach, like, act like you give a rip about the people that you're dealing with. Don't just go on a power trip, because you can just go on a power trip and you are the boss at the end of the day. But
parents, I've seen this, I'm just being really honest here. I've seen parents tell me that use these words. They were so upset with some of the coaches, and they're making them do things like, or it cost them money. Like, here, give me money, you know, right? And they were so upset with the coaches. But then at the same sentence, they say, but what are you going to do, huh? I'm like, what do you mean? What are you going to do? Well, they control it. And they don't control you. And they can, what was the other word? They can sewer us at any point.
Sewer us, yeah.
It's like, no, they can't if you're a good hockey player.
Yeah, if you're good enough, yeah.
But this is the perception. This is how people act. Like, they let someone make decisions for them.
Yeah.
I guess.
So maybe moving into kind of the last thing I wrote down here is talking about the parent behavior, because that's a fun thing.
Well, I always say that, like, I don't know if this is where you're going, but I always say this, like, I use the OHL draft, for example. Parents do not prepare their kids well enough. They prepare them to fail. They don't, and it's a disaster. I can't tell you how many parents come in and they tell me how high their kids are going to get drafted, and they listen to all the wrong people, and they listen to the press about how good their kids are, or, yeah, he should get drafted in the fourth round. He's going in the fourth round. Wow. Someone else says sixth or whatever. They got a letter from the Sarnia Sting, and they go, he's getting drafted to Sarnia in the fourth round. They come to a conclusion. They tell the kid that. And then the draft comes, and they didn't get drafted, and the dad will say he's devastated. Like, what happened? They said this. It's their fault. It's like, no, it's your fault. It's your fault, man, because you didn't do your research. You didn't protect your child, right? So it's the same thing going into a tryout. It's the same thing if you're the best player in the world. Is you don't tell them that.
Shane Wright, man.
Well, there's a perfect example.
First overall.
First overall, that didn't go first overall, right? But you have to prepare your kids for worst case scenarios. The worst case scenario could be, like in the OHL thing, is that you don't get drafted. Okay, now what? Do you still want to play hockey? Like, prepare for that. So when as a parent, this is where the honest conversations with your kids come in, right? Like, it's not about. It's just about being honest. I was going to say, it's not just about hockey, but you have to have that conversation. So if your son wants to try out for hockey, like a AAA team, and your son is going out for the first time, or has been on the bubble, like he's a middle of the pack kid, then the conversation needs to be there. That, okay, so you know that you have to work really hard. You know that they're picking other kids. You know that, just get in order things that the kid realizes that, oh, it might not work, right?
Yep.
And if you can just do that right off the hop, like good conversations to know that this is going to be really hard. There's probably only 3 kids that are going to make this team. Work hard and see what happens, but like you got to prepare them a little bit.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
It's
man.
just like to me, it's the biggest thing is have that conversation. And now I guess it depends on if you're looking at your child, what lens you're looking out of. Are you looking at it like my son played AAA before, so he's on the team no matter what? Are you looking at it like I just, I think my kid's the best kid? Because some parents actually do. It's like, well, if you look at it that lens, there's not much you can do.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about a realistic lens. If you're looking at your hockey player, you go, yeah, he's good. Yeah, he plays on the team. He got 4 goals. 4 is not 30, right? He gets a regular shift or more or less. Like, okay, so that's not more. So that means he's fighting for a spot. You have to have that conversation, and vice versa. If your kid is the best kid on the team, you got to say you got to work hard, and you never know, someone is going to take your spot, and you prepare them to be a little bit more humble and be more of a leadership thing. But that's a different conversation.
Well, I think kind of tailing on that too is you have to remember to have some perspective as the parents, because it can seem like this is the most important thing ever because you're caught up in it. And I've said this so many times before, but when your kid plays a AAA level hockey where it actually ends up being your whole life for 8 months of the year, because
it's all consuming,
right? Because every Friday, Saturday you have a game. You practice twice a week. They might have workouts a couple times a week. Yeah. So the whole week, your schedule for 8 months of the year, it's revolving around the fact that your kid plays hockey.
Yeah.
So
and you know what else, to cut you off, is it's awesome.
It is awesome.
Like, I got to be honest with you. Like, and I probably enjoyed watching my kid because I love watching the way he played hockey. I always said he's my favorite hockey player in the whole world. Still is today. But for my wife and I to go to the rink and watch our son play hockey and see that smile. Remember, you see him on the ice and he had that ear to ear. What'd you call him? Chipmunk face?
Chipmunk face,
always happy.
Yeah.
And to see that joy of playing hockey made me happy because I love the game of hockey.
Yeah.
That he was good at it made it even better. And you do look forward to, and you do make a couple friends, right? I had a couple friends, not a ton. I was friendly to everybody, but I had a couple friends I actually enjoyed. Hey, what are you doing before the game? We're going to go grab a beer? Awesome. We're going to go grab a bite to eat, go after, have something to eat and stuff. I had a very close knit of people like that. So it consumes your life, and it's okay, but you have to keep it in perspective.
Yeah. That's my point.
And these friends that you have now are not necessarily your friends for life. They're friends for now, and you get along and enjoy it. It's freaking awesome. But there's a thing. It consumes your life, and it's a really good thing, but it does consume your life. But for the bottom line, it ends here.
Yeah, and my whole point too is not even that it ends here. It's just that it's not the most important thing ever. So,
at all.
So it's like you see, like so many times, like we were talking about the one kid. So it was his NHL draft year this past year, and he didn't get drafted, and he was supposed to, let's say, and the dad was like devastated that the guy didn't get drafted, that his kid didn't get drafted, and it's like, why? Like, I don't understand how that would be the example you're setting for your kid.
Yeah,
and this is a high level player. Plays in a really good league, obviously, and was supposed to be, or his dad thought he was supposed to be this, that, the other thing.
Yeah. Well, his dad listened to what he wanted to listen to.
Exactly. And that's my whole point, because the parents, they start doing this right from the time the kids are 10. And if you don't have the ability to zoom out and understand that there's a development process, if your kid gets cut when he's 12, maybe he didn't hit puberty yet. Maybe he'll be back in a year or two, right? Or if he doesn't get drafted, lots of kids go on to play at very high levels, college, pro, whatever, that didn't get drafted in the OHL, and vice versa. Like there's nothing that is so consequential at any point in the minor hockey career that it will make or break your kid. And you should know that as mom and dad, because then that leads into what you were saying of helping to prepare your kid for the blows that are going to come. Everybody gets them, right? Very few guys go through unscathed their entire career.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know, so it's just a responsible thing to do as a parent. Is don't act like a teenager when you're dealing with the minor hockey
Yeah.
circumstances that come up surrounding your kid. You have to be able to zoom out, man. It's like there's more important things to your life, even though it's the most important thing to your life right now, because there's so many, it costs a lot of money, it costs a lot of time, your whole schedule's around it, your friends are around it, your kids' friends are around it. It's everything it has to do with that. I get it, man. I did it. You did it. We've
But
all done it.
this is going to be very controversial, possibly. I probably said it before though, but like for me, and I always said this to my wife, for the investment and the time and like, because it's crazy. It's crazy. Like it's every night. So if my son wasn't, and let's not even say the top two players, but like if he was close and worked like a dog, okay, maybe I can live with that because there's a life lesson in there. But if you're sitting at the mid to the bottom and there's like basically not much of a chance to move on, that's a huge investment.
Yeah,
Huge.
and that's fair enough. But like people, you can make your own choice. Like if you want to spend your money and your time doing that, like go for it, man. Even if your kid's a borderline player, that's your you can do that if you want, man. If you got the money, if you want to spend your time doing that,
100%.
go for it. But
yeah, but to get emotionally,
that's right.
That's my point.
Right.
To be emotionally distraught about it at the end of the day, it's like, wow, come on, guys.
It should never happen, ever.
No.
Even if your kid's the best. And parents will talk about kids that are the best on their team when they're like 10, 11, 12. And it's just funny because like when parents come and bring those kinds of stories to us, like I said, we sit and we listen and we laugh and we say, well, we always throw caveats at people.
Yeah.
That's what's funny. It's like people come and be like, this kid is just unbelievable. He's this, that, and whatever. And it's like, for now, like today he is. And I can go through every single team at every single level ever. And the kid that's the best when they're 10 is not the kid that's the best when they're 12, is not the kid that's the best when they're 16 or whatever. Almost never. Almost never. You get the odd guy. Of course, there's exceptions to every rule. That's just straight through. He's always unreal. But
it's funny. My brother was talking about a kid that was in the 06 group. There was their draft. I guess he's a year younger, 07. So he said this kid, he goes, because his son, my nephew, played against him. He goes, I'm not going to say the name. So they played against him. He goes, Andy, this guy was a stud. He was the best player I've ever seen at that age. And I go, yeah. I said, I've heard his name. He goes, Andy, he was the best. And then I said, let me see where he's at and all that stuff. And it's like, he's just really good. He's just good.
Yeah.
He's not the best. And and my brother said he's huge. He like an Adam and Pee Wee, or Adam. So that's U10. He was huge. He was like 5'6" or something like that. And and now he's just good.
Yeah.
Good player. And I said, yeah, it changes, man. It changes.
And
but
it changes
and
fast,
to say
man.
it never happened. No, some guys are just the best all the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind just as the parents, man. You got to be able to take the zoom out because things change so quick, and to get all bent out of shape and, everyone's calling everyone to talk about how bullshit everything is. And there's all this politics and hockey and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you can make it that if you want, but it's not a necessary thing to get sucked into. So you can obviously you can be invested in it and all that kind of stuff, but you have to be able to zoom out as mom and dad and be mom and dad, particularly when it's actually your kids that are doing the activity. It's not for you. And that's kind of the things, the lines can get a little bit blurred when, it's that much of a commitment and that much of an investment as a parent, but you still got to be mom and dad, So
100%. It's critical.
Yeah. So that's all I had written down here. Is anything else you want to touch on before we wrap
just
it up?
with the tryouts and stuff, it's just so funny. I'm not leaving it on this. I'm just saying it just reminded me. It always reminds me. It never ceases to amaze me when I look at the youth hockey, and I'm sure it goes on in the OHL too or whatever. It's you see the certain dads in the lobby with their certain friends, and they always have something to say. There's always something going on that's so important all the time. And it's just so chaotic and so crazy, and it's like they go nuts. They go absolutely nuts. It's like I don't understand that part, but like there was a couple incidents every year in tryouts where someone loses their mind as a dad, and it's like it's just not necessary, man. It's just not necessary,
Yeah. Well, and if you're somebody that listens to this stuff, hopefully that is an indicator, at least to me, that you're trying to be someone that can figure it out, and you're trying to find good information and do the best job you can as mom and dad or coach or player or whatever. That's an indicator to me if you're listening to this right now. So take this as a lesson. If you can do some self-reflection and just ask the question, like, are you the parent at the hockey practice that's right in the middle of the chatter about whatever tournament thing is coming up, or spring hockey this, or tryout this, or the coach said this to my kid and not your kid? And if you're in the middle of that, man, it's like, stop contributing to the problem.
Yeah.
Just take some and that doesn't mean you can't talk to anybody or you can't have an opinion on what's going on or whatever, but you got to keep things in perspective, man. It's important. So
it's so funny the process, though. I guess I'm finishing.
I know. Yeah, go ahead.
It's so funny the process, though, because like I have to say, like, as a dad, like it's they're your kids, and you either you love watching and it's great, and like, or it's not, or whatever, but you go to the rink. And for some dads, there's one of my friends, he's one of the nicest people you ever met. You get, when he gets behind the glass at a hockey game, he turns, like, I'd take him to any bar fight. Yeah. He loses his marbles, and he's like so smart, makes a ton of money, is like a super nice guy. And as soon as he walks away from that glass, he's the nicest guy again. But he goes in there and he calls refs names, and he just, like, he loses his shit.
Yeah.
Anyways, my point to that was, it's, as a parent, it's very easy, very, very, very easy to get caught up in all tiny little things. It really is. If your kid didn't have the perfect game, if you missed something, and like, why? It's not you. I guess you feel for your kid. I don't know. I really don't really get it. But you get caught up in the moment and all that kind of stuff. But what I would say is, like, for most people, try to just enjoy it, because, like, it's going to be over so fast. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Because once you get to if your son is fortunate enough to have his dreams come true, or he works hard to have his dreams come true, when you get to the junior level and above, it's all out of your control. And then it's like, things reveal itself anyways. Like, you'll see, oh, he's just, like, he's just good. Like, I thought he was a star. He's just pretty good. It's out of your control. It's out of your control. So sometimes you like, at a certain level, you have to just let it be, and the kid will have to figure it out. Like, and it just is what it is.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, that's good, man. Hopefully that's somewhat interesting and helpful. So I think people will likely have some questions, because I know it's a timely topic and it's affecting a lot of parents right now. So if you guys have any questions, drop us a message or whatever. And smell the roses watching your kids play, man. If you're the coaches,
hard to do. Talk
to the kids, man. Talk to the kids. And if you're the kids, have fun playing hockey. That's all I have to say about that.
That's the most important.
Okay, we'll see you next week.